Frederick Fleet, Lookout. It was nearly midnight. I was on the night shift in the Crow's Nest. The sea was as smooth as a pond, and the brilliant sky brilliant with stars. It was freezing. All I could see was my breath. I didn't have my binoculars because they'd been locked in a cupboard, and no one knew where the keys were. Suddenly I spotted the towering grey mountain of ice dead ahead. It came out of nowhere. I would have seen it sooner if I'd had a pair of binoculars. I ran to the bridge as fast as I could. "Iceberg right ahead!" I shouted down the telephone, and then I waited. The iceberg was only a mile away. There was nothing I could do now. I braced myself against the mast for the collision. Bruce Ismay, the manager of the White Star Line who owned the Titanic. Some people say they heard me persuading Captain Smith to go faster. This is not true. I've always said that it is not the speed of the ship that matters, but how luxurious it is. It was certainly not my fault that the Titanic was travelling so fast when we hit the iceberg. Titanic had more lifeboats than it legally required. I was even happy to include 4 collapsible boats. It still wasn't enough, I accept that, and I'm terribly sorry for those who didn't get to a boat. But the ship sank so quickly, we wouldn't have had time to fit any more people in any way. I helped as many people as I could into boats before I got into one myself. There were no more women or children around. I felt that I could be of more help to the survivors than to those still on the ship. From now on, White Star Line will include enough boats for everybody. Edward Smith, the captain of the Titanic. I was a highly experienced captain. In fact, I even helped to avoid a disaster in Southampton as the Titanic set sail. The size of the ship meant that when it moved forward, it sucked in a smaller boat towards it. It was thanks to me that we swerved out of the way in time. The only reason we were travelling so quickly when we hit the iceberg was because the water was so calm and the sky was so clear. My wireless operator did mention that there was ice in the area, but it is usually much smaller than the iceberg we hit. If I'd known, I'd have slowed down, of course. When we sank, I helped as many women and children into the boats as I could. The last anyone saw of me was helping a child into a boat, then drifting away in the icy waters. Walter Lord, captain of the SS Californian. We had stopped our ship, the SS Californian, for the night because the sea was filled with pack ice. Before we went to bed, our telegraph operator sent a message to a large ship about 10 miles away, warning it there was ice about. It was the Titanic. They told us to stop messaging them, as they had a backlog of messages to send to passengers' relatives in New York. Later that night, my second officer noticed rockets being fired off from the Titanic. He tried to signal using a flashlight, but got no response. We never thought to switch the radio on. Several more rockets were fired, and the ship did look rather strange. Then it seemed to disappear, as though it was sailing away. I decided to get in touch with them in the morning. I didn't know it had sunk. Otherwise, I would have helped. Thomas Andrews, the ship designer. I was the designer of the Titanic, and I always went out on the maiden voyage of any ship I designed. It was meant to be unsinkable. I included 16 watertight compartments in the hull. This meant that if there was a leak, it would be contained into a small area. These compartments didn't reach as high as they should have been, and I was told that I needed to make more room for more luxury cabins. I had to design what I was told to. Once we had hit the iceberg, I walked with Captain Smith to check out the damage. First, we visited the flooding mailroom and the squash court, which was also quickly filling with water. Back on the bridge, I broke the news to the captain that in view of the damage the ship had suffered, I did not expect it to stay afloat more than 2 hours, as the watertight compartments didn't reach high enough. I spent the final hours helping passengers into boats and throwing deck chairs overboard to assist people struggling in the water. We were the company that owned the ship yard where the Titanic was built in Belfast. We used 3 million rivets to hold the ship together. It was an expensive ship to build. We had to try and make the ship as cost-effective as possible. When the ship hit the iceberg, the heads of the rivets snapped off, which tore sections of the ship wide open. These rivets also had the possibility of becoming brittle in cold temperatures. The higher quality iron rivets might have made a difference, but we couldn't predict that there would be a collision or that the temperature would be so cold.